In this section, you are going to examine the collections of the Puranas, especially their organization and form. We will look at four major categories of text. First, the Mahapuranas, second, the Upapurana, third, the Sthala Purana, and then fourth, the Skanda Purana. The Mahapuranas have been classified based upon specific deities that they refer to and are associated with. That being said, you should note that some of these associations might not mean that the deity is specifically mentioned in the text. For example, the Brahmapurana, sometimes also called the Adi Purana because it's the first of the 18, has 245 chapters and shares many passages with the Vishnu, Vayu, Markandeya, and other Puranas, as well as with the Mahabharata. It includes mythology, theories about war, Dhammayuddha, artwork for temples, and other cultural topics. It describes holy places in Odisha and weaves themes of Vishnu and Shiva together, but hardly any mention of deity Brahma despite its title and association. The Agni Purana contains encyclopedic information. It includes geography of Mithila, Bihar, and neighboring areas, cultural history, politics, education, iconography, theories of taxation, organization of the military, and so forth. It includes information on trees and plants and medicine, the Vastu Shastra on architecture, studies of gems, as well as grammar, metrics, theories about poetry, theories about food rituals, and a host of other topics. So it's a sort of encyclopedia, but devoted to Agni in that sense. The Garuda Purana is an encyclopedia of very diverse topics, but it's primarily about Vishnu, and praises all other gods, though. It describes how Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma collaborate, perhaps being part of the theory of the Trimurti, a combination of Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma into a three-faced deity. Many subchapters are a dialogue between Vishnu and the bird vehicle, Garuda. It covers cosmology, describes the relationship between the god, discusses the nature of dharma, and what are crimes and the nature of adharmic and dharmic action. It also covers theories of yoga, the notions of the lokas, the theory of karma and samsara. It includes an Upanishadic discussion of self-knowledge as a means of moksha. It also includes chapters on rivers, geography of the South Asian subcontinent known as Bharat, and other subcontinents or parts of the earth, covering materials about types of minerals, stones, testing methods for stones and their quality, descriptions of various diseases, their symptoms, and their medicines, aphrodisiacs, prophylactics, as well as combinations of studies of the Hindu calendar and its basis, astronomy and astrology, moons, planets, and the stars, the essential features of a temple, and also rites of passage. The distinction between the Upapuranas and the Mahapuranas has been explained by Rajendra Hazra as, quote, a Mahapurana is well known, and that which is less well known becomes an Upapurana. Rocher states that the distinction between the Mahapurana and the Upapurana is in fact ahistorical. There is little corroborating evidence that either were more or less common, and that the term Mahapurana occurs actually quite rarely in the sources of the Puranas themselves. The Upapuranas are 18 in number, with some disagreement as to which are canonical and which are not. They include, among others, the Sana Kumara, the Narasimha, Brihanaradiya, the Shiva Rashaya, the Durvasa, Kapila, Vamana, Bhargava, Varuna, Kalika, Samba, Nandi, Surya, and many others, including Ganesha and Hamsa. So these are devotions to gods. Narasimha is a fierce avatar of the Hindu god Vishnu, who will come up again soon. One who incarnates in the form of part lion and part man to destroy adharmic actions and actors, and end religious persecution and calamity on the Bhuloka, or earth, thereby restoring the Dharma. Varuna, or Varuna, is a god of the oceans. His vehicle is a makara, a crocodile, pictured in the top left, and his weapon is the pasha, the noose or the rope loop. He is the guardian deity of the western direction, and in some Purana texts, he's the father of the Vedic sage Vashishta. Nandi is the gate guardian deity of Kailasa, the home of the Lord Shiva. And thus the Nandi cow, pictured in the top right, is associated with Shiva. The Nandi is usually depicted as a bull, and the decorated bull Ganji Redu is the tradition of ancient South Asia. Ganesha, another Puranic figure, also known as Ganapati or Vinayaka, is one of the best known and most worshipped deities in Hindu culture. He is portrayed with the head of an elephant. His image is found throughout South Asia, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, but also Southeast Asia, Thailand, Bali, and Indonesia, images in Malaysia as well, and Tamil diasporic communities in Malaysia, and also in Tamil diasporic communities, and even in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. He's popular in Bangladesh, among Hindus in Bangladesh, and in countries with relatively large Indian diasporic populations, and this would include Fiji, Mauritius, Trinidad and Tobago, and so forth. Hindu schools across the world worship Ganesha regardless of their affiliations. Devotion to Ganesha is widely diffused and extends even to Jains and Buddhists as well, as he is associated with blessings and good luck. Although Ganesha has many attributes, he's most recognizable by that elephant head, and he's widely revered more specifically as the remover of obstacles, the patron of the arts and sciences being sort of collaborating forces here together, and the deva of intellect and wisdom. As the god of beginnings, he is honored at the start of ceremonies. Ganesha is also invoked as a patron of letters and learning during writing sessions, so remember that before you start writing your papers. The Sthala Purana is a sort of corpus of texts that tells the origins of traditions of particular Tamil Shaiva temples or shrines. There are numerous Sthala Puranas, most written in vernaculars, although some exist in Sanskrit versions as well. The 275 Shiva Sthalams of the continent have Puranas for each, so they have distinct Puranas for each little temple, famously glorified in the Tamil literature Tavaram. Some appear in Sanskrit versions in the Mahapuranas or the Upapuranas. Some of the Tamil Sthala Puranas have been researched by scholars who write in English and French and so forth. But they are in fact innumerable in number. There is a Purana for every little shrine in Tamil Nadu. It glorifies the shrine, the deity installed there, the temple tank, and then the temple tree. In fact, it is glorified by local legends and written in a religious sort of affiliation towards that site. The Sthala Puranas, in this case, may also be considered as a collection of local folk histories. Such texts were first written down in the 16th century, we think, so relatively late, and then getting into the early modern period, and they continue to be written down in the present day. In one particularly important Sthala Purana, sage Agastya, wanted to take two hills, Shivagiri and Shaktigiri, to his abode in the south and commissioned his disciple Induban to carry them. Induban bore the hills slung across his shoulders in the form of a kavadi, one on one side and one on the other. When he was fatigued, he placed the kavadi near Palani to take a rest. At this stage, Subramania, or Murugan, had been outwitted in a contest for going around the world. Ganapati, or Ganesha, had won the prized fruit, a pomegranate or a mango, depending on the version, by simply going around his parents. Long after this, Subramania came sweating on his peacock to find that the prize had already been given away. In anger, the frustrated child left the divine parents and came down to Tiruavinankudi at the Adivaram, which is essentially the foot of the Shivagiri hill. Shiva pacified him by saying that he, Subramania, himself was the fruit or the pasam of all wisdom and knowledge. Hence the place was called Pasamni, or later Palani, the hill. Later he withdrew to the hill and settled there as a recluse in peace and solitude. When Induban resumed his journey, he could not lift this giant hill. Muruga had made it impossible for Induban to lift it up. In a fierce battle that ensued, Induban was killed, but was later restored to life. And Induban recited a mantra that stated, whosoever carried the kavadi on his shoulders, signifying the two hills, and visited the temple on a vow, should be blessed, and he should be given the privilege of standing sentinel to the entrance of the hill. Hence we have the Induban shrine halfway up the hill, where every pilgrim from Tamil Nadu is expected to offer obeisance to Induban before entering the temple of Dandiyudapani. Since this time immemorial, pilgrims to Palani bring their offerings on their shoulders in a kavadi. The custom has spread from Palani to all Muruga shrines worldwide, especially in Tamil Nadu and in Tamil communities in Southeast Asia. So you will remember this image on the left-hand side of the slide here in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, at the Batu Caves, associated with the Tamil diaspora community in that area, and the giant Murugan statue there. This relates also to the Skanda Purana, which is the largest Purana with some 81,000 verses, namely after the deity Skanda, the son of Shiva and Uma, the brother of Ganesha, or Ganapati. The mythological part of the text weaves the stories of Shiva and Vishnu together with Parvati, Rama, Krishna, and other major gods in Hindu culture. Vishnu is nobody but Shiva, and he who is called Shiva is but identical to Vishnu, the Skanda Purana asserts. Common elements in variant editions are relatively encyclopedic, much like other Puranas. They cover cosmogony, the story of the origins of the universe, mythologies, geology, or then the genealogy of gods, dharma, adharma, nature of festivals, the study of gems, temples, and so forth, as well as, in this case, the qualities of Shiva as the absolute and the source of true knowledge. The Skanda Purana has received new scholarly interest, especially since that late 20th century discovery of the Nepalese Skanda Purana manuscript, which is dated to the early 9th century. This establishes that the Skanda Purana has existed since the 9th century, and we have the association of Skanda with being offspring of Shiva. But it's interesting in this case that the sort of Shiva or Shaivite school is making the assertion that Shiva and Vishnu are in fact the same. This could be contesting a claim of the Vaishnava school, you might say. The main deity Skanda is also known as Kartikeya, or Kumara, Murugan, and Subramanya. Skanda is the Hindu god of war. As the son of Parvati and Shiva and the brother of Ganesha, the subject or the main figure in the Skanda Purana is a god whose life story has many versions in Hinduism, perhaps surprising some. So for your post, hop on one of these 3 threads. First, how would you compare the Puranas so far to other texts that we have discussed in the course? In the second thread, you might consider specifically, how would you compare the Puranas to the Vedas, the Upanishads, or the Dhamma-shastras? And a follow-up question. Specific to the other texts in Itihasa, how do the Puranas compare to the Mahabharata or the Mahabharatas and the Ramayana or the Ramayanas? So go ahead and make a quick post and let's get the discussion going.